welcome to another episode of Candace's Corner.
How are you doing? I know this week, week 6 of being quarantined, I sort of hit a breaking point. I had myself a good cry, a nice big old fashioned pity party, and yeah, I had a really bad day one day. And so it was interesting. I was reading a book, and it actually wasn't my Bible. It was another book. I pulled out a bunch of books for my daughter that I had saved from when I was her age. And I remembered I had them in the garage since we can't go to the library. I thought, I'll pull all these out and she can read them. And she's enjoyed them, and I've been reading a few of them too. And I was reading in this one book, and it's just a fiction book, but it talked about the German word for worry. And the German word for worry actually has the same meaning from the German word strangle. And so I actually called a friend of mine who speaks German and said, hey, is this true? And he doesn't speak it fluently, but he speaks it conversationally. And he said, let me look it up in my German dictionary. So he looked it up, and it is true. The word worry and strangle come from the same background, the same origin. And it's like the word worry is like when a wolf actually grabs its prey, like it's strangling it. And that's a little bit how I'd been feeling that day. You know, last week we talked about prayer, and as I was talking to a friend about prayer and worry and, you know, thinking to myself, when is this going to end? What's going to happen with our future? She told me about her experience of taking prayer a step further and fasting. And so I decided to invite her on the show today. She is a mom of 4. She homeschools. For you homeschool friends, she has been a director of classical conversations. She is bilingual. She grew up in Colombia, South America. And I'm so excited and thrilled for her just to be able to share her experience of fasting, what God taught her, and how she went about it. So, Audrey, thank you so much for joining me today on Candace's Corner and being willing to share your experience about fasting and what you learned from it and why you even did it to begin with.
Thanks for having me. It's a joy and a privilege to be here and to get to be a part of your segment. I love it. I love watching it and have been really encouraged by the things you've shared.
Thank you. So, what led you to fasting last week?
Well, it's really cool because as I was telling you when we were talking earlier, the method that you shared about prayer last week, my husband and I had read a book by Don Whitney, and we had heard him speak about praying through the Bible, and it really transformed the way we prayed, especially when we were praying together as a couple. And as a result of that, we picked up another book called Spiritual Disciplines for the Christian Life. One thing that I learned when I was reading through the chapter in the book, and one thing that really convicted me as I was reading in Matthew chapter 6, right after Jesus teaches the disciples the Lord's Prayer and talks about prayer with them and teaches them how to pray, you know, he started that segment with, and when you pray. And then he teaches them the Lord's Prayer. And then right immediately after that, in verse 16, he says, and when you fast. And so I just was struck by the word when as opposed to if. And I was thinking about how it's something that God has given us as a way to almost intensify our spiritual desire. And so I was just really convicted by how come I don't really take advantage of this when you fast. I haven't done it very much, maybe just a few times in my life, and actually usually kind of in a corporate setting, like a couple people will say, let's fast for this thing. But I hadn't ever done a personal fast. So by no means am I a pro or an expert. But I just felt like, okay, well, obviously this is an opportunity that God has for us, that we can do this. And it's, as I looked through the Bible, fasting is often coupled with prayer. So prayer and fasting. And so I just started to think about how it can be a way to involve my whole body in, and he used that phrase, intensifying your spiritual desire. So it wasn't about, like in the past, I may have thought it's a wrong thought, but I may have thought, well, if I pray and fast, then maybe I'll get what he wants. It's kind of like a way, or what I want. Maybe some people see fasting as a way to manipulate God. And the way my perspective changed after reading the chapter of that book was that it's not about getting something from God. It's about taking time to humble myself in his presence and say that what I'm asking for is or what I'm praying about and my relationship with him is more important than that physical thing. And there was just this one quote from the book I was hoping I could share with you.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it says, fasting can be a testimony, even when directed to yourself, that you find your greatest pleasure and enjoyment in life from God. Mm. It's a way of demonstrating to yourself that you love God more than food, or we could, insert whatever other thing you're fasting from, but that seeking him is more important than that thing, and that Jesus, the bread of heaven, is more satisfying than anything else. And that perfectly describes what it did in my heart. Instead of my heart being weary and worried and even strangled by my own anxieties and cares and worries and desires, it allowed me to refocus my heart and see that he is the one who provides for all my needs.
Yes. Thank you, Audrey, so much for sharing your experience and what you learned and what God has taught you. I really appreciate you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. You're welcome.
So after hearing Audrey, I would encourage you today to give fasting a try. Maybe it's a new spiritual discipline for you. Start easy. Start with one meal a week. If maybe you can't fast from food, pick something else. Maybe it's television, social media, whatever it might be. Do something that's going to help you in these times when we feel wearisome and strangled, like we talked about earlier. I know just this week I blasted the music, some worship music in the car and sang as loud as I could, and it just lightened my spirit so much. I hope you're encouraged today to give fasting a try and let the Lord work in your life through fasting. Now we're going to talk about our family section. Some of you might not like me what I'm going to share, but it's been super helpful for our family, and that is to have a media-free day each week. So what does that mean exactly? Well, it means exactly what it sounds like. No media. So we don't watch television, we don't watch movies, we get off all devices, phones, etc. And it has been super helpful for our family. It just allows us to sort of breathe after a week of being on devices all week long, from work to school to everything else. So I would like to challenge you to pick a day. Pick a day where you can do that with your family. We do it on Saturdays. That's just the day that works best for us. And I'm going to tell you, your kids are not going to like it. They're going to moan. They're going to be like, why do we have to do this? But let me tell you, it gets better. The more you do it, the better it gets. And I will say, we do break it on occasion. If there's some special event happening on TV or something, we will turn it on and watch that. But for the most part, we're pretty consistent about it. And our kids even get on us. If for some reason I start to look something up on my phone, they'll say, Mom, it's media free day, or Dad, it's media free day. So it's good for us too, as parents, to be accountable also. Use the time to be creative. Recently, we created a fairy garden, and we've spent time playing gaga ball on our trampoline. Things that we wouldn't do if we just sat inside on devices. And so use the time to help bring your family together. Lastly, on Candace's Corner, I want to talk to you about a recipe. It's a super easy recipe. By now, you're probably noticing I like easy recipes. It's 3 ingredients, and I use it on almost every cake that I make. It's a frosting recipe. I got it from a dear friend of mine, and what I love about it is I don't really like icky, sweet frosting. I just don't. And so this is really light and fluffy, and it's a whipped cream pudding frosting. And you can use any kind of pudding that you like. You can use vanilla, white chocolate, chocolate. Here's a cake I recently made for my daughter's birthday using this frosting. It's an emoji cake. I'm not an amazing decorator or anything, but you can at least see what it looks like. It's super light and fluffy. I hope you give it a try. Thanks for joining me on Candace's Corner, and don't forget to stay bold.